Don't let your kids watch it!
Welcome everyone to the UndercoverBrony Reviews. The episode reviewed today will be The Traditional Unicorn Sleepover, written by Julia Prescott. So this is the episode that everyone has been waiting for, The Traditional Unicorn Sleepover. This episode is great.
This is the episode that actually, after 6 or so episodes, I was like, oh, I actually want to watch more of this now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go.
Yep. Let's go.
Yes.
Like one of those speedrunners. It's just like, let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go.
First thing I have on my notes. I cannot believe that Izzy treats Sparky like a dog. Like, here, Sparky. Slow down, Sparky. Just like, oh my God.
Everything about Sparky and the way that he acts and is treated just throws me for a loop.
Yes.
Like his weird, oddly, he's like Spike if Spike never actually evolved the ability to speak.
Yes.
It's so bizarre because he's got the eyes of one of the ponies. They look like they express like that, a pony child, and yet he's very decidedly still an animal. I don't know how to treat it. And then you have Izzy treating him like a dog, and I'm just like, what is this?
Yes.
I don't like it.
Yes.
I don't like it.
And I have to say, this is the thing that got both of us. It's the stinger right before the intro. It's Sparky starts growling. And then as the shot is panning over to Misty in the shadows, you have Izzy going,
"What's wrong? You're acting like there's some mysterious and scary presence lurking in the shadows directly behind me."
It's like one of the most Pinkie Pie moments, and I mean that in a good way. It is something that I would so much expect to see Pinkie Pie say. Even just the framing of the shots where Izzy looks legitimately intimidating, which somehow makes it even funnier that it is a legitimately really intimidating shot combined with the hilarious joke, and then bam, there's our intro. That's the cold open.
Yep.
Legitimately got me. I was like, that was A class. That was fantastic.
I want to say that this is a similar cold open to that one memed to death scene from The Office.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Oh, I love that cold open. That was phenomenal. I have to say, I love that this entire episode, it switches Misty's character a little bit. Because the entire time we've seen her beforehand, she's constantly being berated by Opaline. She's constantly trying to impress her. But here, she is very socially awkward. One thing I do have to say that I love about Misty here is that she painted on her own cutie mark, and it's a butterfly, and I thought that was really, really cute.
It's really sweet. It's super cute.
And then you have Izzy is just like, oh my gosh, you're another unicorn. Oh my gosh, I need to have a sleepover with you. You have to be my best friend ever. All this stuff. And I really love Izzy's optimism. But you can definitely tell that Misty's just like, what's going on here? It's great.
The dynamic of Izzy's enthusiasm with Misty's completely taken aback by this reaction. Misty is both adorable and awkward, but, has this sort of trained deviousness from Opaline. But her plan, you can tell, is immediately thrown by the fact that she was not expecting Izzy to have this reaction. Mm-hmm. And the dynamic of that is adorable and really funny and constantly entertaining. It's also interesting because this is the first point where we start to see something that we're going to see throughout the rest of this episode that I'm sure I'll continue to reference, is seeing Izzy does have this intense reaction, which is cool because this is, I think so far, one of the, aside from when we saw Izzy in the previous episode give, Sunny Star Scout this pep talk where we're seeing some really legitimate emotion from Izzy, which is great to see. It's something that we saw with Pinkie Pie that makes her a great character, is that she's not just this goofball character. She has real emotions, real feelings, and we're starting to see, there's this almost a desperation of, oh my gosh, another unicorn. finally.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
we're starting to see, again, what we're going to see a little bit later is the homesickness. It's just really nice to see Izzy expressing real emotion.
For sure. I also have to say that one of Misty's lines here is just great. So she literally goes,
Oh, yes, of course. I thought you said weep over, which is when you, like, cry over not having any lunch, like me, which is why I thought of it just now. I'm really hungry.
I love that.
Just iconic. Just absolutely iconic. Again, like, more stuff that just sounds like it's just straight out of the Pinkie Pie stuff, and like that, and I don't have an issue with. Like, normally it's like, I would be like, oh, trying to be a little more original with it. No, this is fine. That's just hilarious. That is legitimately really funny. Just the idea that, like, even just the idea that's like, that's a pre-established, like, term, and you're kind of like, wait, is that a unicorn thing, or is that just an Izzy thing? Either way, it's really funny.
And I do have to say that really does play into Misty's really nervousness about everything, and that it just really plays well into her current predicament and her situation. Izzy goes back to the Bright House and is talking about, oh yeah, she had hooves like me, she had a horn like me.
And a face! Just like me.
Just like me.
Oh,
my
it's
gosh.
great. It is absolutely great. Izzy and Misty have the best lines in all this episode. It's
They
really
absolutely do.
about Misty and Izzy in this particular episode. The other characters are there too, but the sole focus is on the two unicorns, which I love.
Agreed. And I absolutely think that, honestly, I think, at least up until this point, Izzy and Misty have been the two strongest characters to me. I think Misty is one of the most interesting. I think Izzy is one of the most constantly entertaining, in a way that is not cringy. So seeing an episode that's really focusing on both of them, where not only do we get a lot of screen time from both of them, but they're interacting with each other for like the first, for extended period of time for the first time. I'm like, yes, let's go.
One thing, and I'm going to knock this episode for, and I hate to do it, but I have to say it. I really, really can't stand Zip's characterization here. Because I understand she wants to figure things out. She wants to kind of, have that detective aspect about her. But the way she goes about it, it hits me particularly hard. And I know this is part of my notes, so I don't like Zip's accusatory tone this entire episode. Because we know as the audience that Missy is working for Opaline. But for the characters themselves, you could really see it as the fact of Misty is just very socially awkward. It's really, really rude to put her on the spot like that the majority of the time. Asking all these accusatory questions. Hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Very, very insensitive from Zip in this episode.
Agreed. And it's like you were saying, we as the viewers, it kind of makes more sense. But if you, in your mind, try to forget that and just see it from the other character's perspective, it is very, very rude. And it's kind of a shame because we just talked about this in the last review that we did of the previous episode, that I liked where Zip's character was going, where she's not just taking notes or whatever, she's actually taking action that is moving the plot forward. That's happening here. She is taking actions and moving the plot forward, but in a way that is now making Zip, it's kind of making her the villain, at least in my eyes. Like, it's not, the writing clearly isn't intending it that way. It would almost be kind of nice if it did, where it's like they kind of pushed back on her a little bit, like, hey, just because she's awkward doesn't mean that, that would have been an interesting plot point. But it's all kind of moot, because again, we as the viewers know that Misty is got ulterior motives, but it definitely is like, dang it, guys, you were so close, but there's this misstep where, it just makes Zip kind of unlikable. It's a shame.
And her character works like the characterization of her being a detective works against her in this episode.
Yes, it does.
But moving on, we have Izzy being like, "Oh my gosh, I need to set this traditional unicorn sleepover because I know she's from Bridalwood. We'll have all these things in common. Let's start hanging things up." She rolls up these yarn. Everyone rolls up yarn balls. They string up these tea lights, and they hang scarves for ambiance.
For ambiance.
I love that. And then you hear the doorbell ring, and it's the My Little Pony theme. It's
Sweet sauce horseshoe toss. She's here.
Yeah, it's like, all right, good job, guys.
it
Very
reminds
nice.
me. I don't know if you've heard of this. There is this YouTuber by the name of Family Jules 7X, and he does a lot of like metal covers of like different video game soundtracks, and one of the interesting things is he has a separate channel that he is living in this house with a bunch of other gamers, and
I think I know what this is. I think I remember this. I
and
think I know
he
what you're referencing.
has this programmable doorbell that he does multiple videos about it. The first one they did was playing Megalovania.
Yep.
And
yep.
then-
he got it to play just the da 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 da. Yeah, it was the entire riff, that entire like lick that plays that entire song. Oh, so funny.
Yes.
I haven't watched that. I haven't thought about that video for years. I need to go watch that video again.
Yes, and then they have additional ones where there's one where he programmed this little like jazz stinger because one of his friends who's like a full jazz nerd comes through and he rang the doorbell.
Oh God, that's so good.
That was great. But then the last one he did was the coffin dance, the dee 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 dee.
I never saw that one. That's hilarious.
And he programs it, he plays it, and one of his roommates is just like, I told you not to fucking resurrect these dead memes.
It's pretty good.
Jules, what the fuck did I say about making dead means trying to come back? Come here!
So basically, TLDR or TLDW, too long didn't watch. Basically, they have a programmable doorbell, and it's really, really funny.
Yes, which also, like, I get that this is like that was a passing joke / reference, but it also means that the My Little Pony theme is canon within the universe? Question mark?
Yeah. It's
Anyway.
is it diegetic? Oh my god.
Exactly. Is it just their version of like it's their version? You know how in real life we have just the lick? Na 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 na. Is it just that?
Maybe.
We don't know.
I don't know.
But it's canon. It's canon in the universe, and whatever.
It's canon, motherfuckers.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It is factually canon that melody exists in the universe as a known thing. Wait a minute. What if it's just like the most well-known doorbell sound in all of the My Little Pony universe, but we know it as the theme song?
So one of the other notes I have here, and I know I've talked about this before, whereas we know Missy's true intentions, but the characters do not. I put here that, to be honest, Misty's neuroticism could really be chalked up to being incredibly introverted and sheltered her whole life, which makes a whole lot of sense.
Which correlates to the fact that she doesn't have knowledge of these unicorn traditions, right? Implying that whenever Opaline found / kidnapped her, she was very young. Like, she did not have a unicorn upbringing, which has some interesting implications as to how long she's, been living under Opaline. Certainly none of those implications are good, but it's definitely interesting. I was like, I hope we get a follow-up on that at some point.
I hope so too. Now, this whole episode, they just start going from one thing to the next to the next. They're doing it rapid fire. First thing that they do, they put these glitter and these little gems on the horns, and they use their magic to make them glow. I thought that was really, really cool. And then when Pip tries to pour it on her fake horn and it just goes into her face like a beard, I immediately thought, as I was watching it to take notes, was just like, by Celestia's beard.
Oh, God. Oh, that's an old reference, John. I haven't heard that one in years. It's like if we see a banana and it's like, you won't find any bananas on the moon.
Yeah.
It's like, that's an old reference, but I appreciate it.
Yes.
I appreciate the reference.
I guess I can be the one to just tell us how fucking old we are.
I suppose. In this little montage that we have of going through all the different things, another one of the just like fantastic Izzy moments that we have in this episode is when they're setting up the board game, Dare the Mayor, and that one of the rules is if the rules explanation goes on for too long, you just don't play the game. Like, you just skip it. Like, that's hilarious. It's like, it's kind of a commentary on, like, kind of how hard it can be to learn new board games, because, like, I'm sure we've all had this experience where someone's explaining the rules of a board game or a card game, and you're like, wait, what? Because it's an information overload. You kind of just need to learn by playing. So, like, that's an experience that we've all had. And then it's also just, like, so in character for Izzy / the unicorn culture to just have that as a rule, where if it goes on for too long, it's like, nope, we just move on to the next thing. And it's just like, wait, what? It's hilarious. It's really funny.
And it kind of reminds me that it happened to me just a couple of weeks ago, because for the first time I learned to play Unstable Unicorns. And that is, you really have to just play it to understand it.
Yep, you can have it explained to you a bunch of times, but until you actually know,
for sure. I know there's another board game that I actually just bought, and I'm bringing it to the next game night I have with my buddies. But it's this game. It's a board game based on Dungeons and Dragons, and it's called Lords of Waterdeep. And what it is you have this board, and basically what you do is you complete quests, and when you complete those quests, you're able to move around the board, and whoever gets the furthest along in the board wins the game. But you also have this card called the Lord of Waterdeep, and so for an example, one of mine, when I played it last, was every tower that I built on the field would give me like 5 extra steps around the board. And so by the end of it, I had like 6 or 7 towers built up, and I was able to get a bunch of extra spaces because of that. So it was really a lot of fun.
That sounds like a really cool concept for a game too. Just the progressing, doing that sounds pretty cool. I would like to see this game at some point.
For sure. Then they go to stuff like a pillow fort, which is great. They have this hoof reading section.
The art of hoof reading has been in the Moonbow family for generations. It all started with great-great-auntie Buttons. Ooh, so interesting.
I love how in this universe / this part of, like, this generation of the Equestria universe, that unicorns have kind of just become hippies.
Yes.
Like, in the absence of actual magic, they've become just hippie astrology people. It's not pushed too hard, which I like. Like, it's not like Izzy's entire personality is just a hippie. It's definitely not that. But a number of references that clearly paint unicorn culture generally as being really hippie-like I think is pretty funny. That's a pretty amusing take on, well, we don't have magic, so we're going to use like pseudo magic, things like that, witchcraft. It's pretty funny, regardless of your beliefs on whether that stuff is real in real life. It's funny that that's what the unicorns had become in the absence of actual magic.
Although I have to say, if we're going further into that, what would Izzy's astrology sign be? And how many people are going to try and ask about that?
I don't know. Man, that's a whole rabbit hole I don't want to go down right now.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother 2-hour video.
Yes.
Probably good content, but not what we're going to do right now.
Yes, for sure. Maybe we'll make another one. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Is the astrology sign breakdown? It's happening here on this channel.
So then they have these teacups that are put in front, and Misty licks her lips and starts drinking, and Izzy's just like, these tea leaves are for reading, not drinking. And then you just have Misty with her cheeks puffed up, and she just spits it back out into the cup.
It's so cute. It's just, again, keep saying this throughout the entire episode, it's just a great like Izzy Misty moment, and it's just so great to see these two characters who are, in my opinion, the two best characters that we have, like interacting for an extended period of time. There's just so much potential there.
And I also got to wonder, does that mean that this is a reference to Shrek 2? When Shrek like starts eating the soup or whatever, and it's like, ooh, good soup, Mrs. Q. And it's like, no, everyone's just dipping their hands in it. One of the guys that Sean that was with us for the original Make Your Mark special, he actually put that on his TikTok as like, is this what they were referencing? I wonder.
Misty, those tea leaves were for reading, not for drinking. Remember?
Oh, boy. Yeah? Oh, sorry. Great soup, Mrs. Q. Mmm.
No, darling.
Oh. Yeah.
So, Fiona.
And then they move on to these buckets of pony corn. Let me just say, Misty goes full ham on these, and she's just like, this is the best thing I've ever had in my life. And it reminds me of my old friend Brian, who mentioned to me that according to Tara Strong, Pocky is Tara Strong's, like, is like crack to Tara Strong. So I wonder if this is like crack to Misty.
Yeah, clearly. It absolutely is. It's one of those moments that's both like cute and kind of sad because she's like, I've never actually had real food.
Yeah.
Like, but it's cute. It's another one of those really cute Misty moments that we've come to, know and adore.
For sure. And then you have this Ask an Amethyst, which is unicorns talking to their crystals? What?
Ask an amethyst.
What's that?
You mean having conversations with your crystals is just a unicorn thing? Whoa.
Again, they are true hippies for sure.
No, absolutely. And isn't this, I think this is where you were mentioning where they have this moment where they're like, wait, that's only a unicorn thing?
Uh-huh.
And like, yeah. It just drives home the unicorns are hippies thing. And Izzy not knowing that it's like, wait, that's only a thing that we do?
Yeah.
Huh, whatever.
Yeah.
Moves on. And the fact that Izzy doesn't like feel like othered or weirded out, she's just like, huh, okay, next thing. Like, it's great.
And then it goes over into this movie that they put on, but they have to watch it all in 3 minutes, so they fast forward it to this one line, and then Izzy's just like so romantic. All right, moving on.
Yep.
We gotta keep moving. We're already way behind schedule because otherwise we're gonna trigger the jinxies.
Yep.
And I love Pip's line here.
What about that unicorn tradition you mentioned where we all balanced yarn balls on our heads and counted the highest number we can think of?
These unicorn traditions, man. Wild times.
Yep. So throughout this entire time, Misty sneaks off. She starts looking for Sunny's lantern.
Yep.
And she comes across that mirror that Sunny had. And so she opens it up and she's like, Opaline, what's going on? And she's like, all right, it doesn't work in the Bright House. So she opens up a window and throws her body, like half her body out of it, and opens it up. It's like, Opaline, I've infiltrated. We're doing all this stuff. It's been great. We've had Ponycorn, which is the best thing ever. We've done all these games, and Opaline is just like disgusted by all of this.
Yeah.
She's just like, are you having fun?
Fun? Yeah.
You really need to tone it down, Opaline. You really
Be nice
do.
to the bean.
Yes,
Yeah.
be nice to the bean. No, I'm doing it for infiltration purposes. I'm trying to gain their trust. And I haven't found it yet, but I know that I'm starting to get on their good side. And they start both maniacally laughing. And I like how this is something that was brought up from episode 1, where they're both maniacally laughing. And in episode 1, she's like, Misty, if you're going to maniacally laugh with me, at least do it in sync. And now here, she maniacally laughs and is just like, you're getting better at it, but it's a marathon, not a sprint.
It's definitely a fun little callback. I do think this show does a pretty good job with those little callbacks to earlier like little character moments. And this is a good one.
Yep. And then you have Opaline saying, hey, the lantern's probably going to be up at the top by the actual Prismium rainbow. And so Misty goes over to the elevator and she starts hitting the button. Nothing's happening. So she's like, bah, 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 and it starts an alarm. And Zip comes up here and it's like, what the heck are you doing? And Misty's like, well, I'm trying to find the washroom. And Zip's just like, the washroom in the elevator? ? And Misty's like, well, I wanted to see the view first. And I actually like how Zip softens up a little bit here, where she's just like, finally a tradition I get. And I'll definitely bring you up there for quite the view another time. But the washroom's down there for right now. She's like, oh, okay.
It is actually kind of nice to see Zip soften up in that moment, because that's kind of what, like we were saying, we kind of wish Zip had sort of acted like a little bit earlier, right? Because I feel like they could have still had these moments of Zip noticing things that she thinks are maybe suspicious, but doesn't have as extreme of a reaction. This sort of more restrained type of thing where it's like, that's a little bit weird, and like she notices that it's weird, but doesn't immediately go to being accusatory. And it's like, it would have been, so it's nice to see that now. And it's like, it kind of shows they could have done that with those earlier moments. But, as much as it's a shame we didn't see that until now, it is nice that this is a moment where Zip's like, oh, okay, no, that actually that tracks.
Yep. And now we get to the part of the episode that everyone is going to be ready for us to talk about. The story that Sunny says, and then the reverse of Misty. So Sunny starts talking about the start of Equestria. It starts out with the way that they talked about it in the movie, where a young unicorn was called by the princess to learn about friendship. She soon earned a lot of good friends of all different pony kinds. There was some sort of magical accident. An earth pony gets hurt by a unicorn, and I wonder if that actually means that the unicorn tried to injure the earth pony, or if it was just an accident. But something sparked that, and I gotta wonder how serious that magical accident actually was. Because everyone started fighting with that, Twilight decided to take all the magic and imbue it in these 3 crystals, which lends more credence to the fact that more than likely, I don't know if you've heard of an individual by the name of Sawtooth Waves. He does My Little Pony Theory videos, and one of the videos he did was that Twilight imbued the crystals with magic as like a last-ditch effort sort of thing. Yeah. I gotta wonder if that's what's going on here. And so when those crystals were imbued, the 3 tribes decided, you know what, let's split off. Let's form our own little communities. They felt safer with their own kind. So then they now came into what is now known as Maritime Bay, Bridalwood, and Zephyr Heights. That led up to the events of the movie. We got the crystals back together. And then you have that inversion, that little, I guess you could call it a Ryan Johnson bait and switch, as Misty is like, you were right about this first part with Twilight learning about friendship, but the actual ruler of this land was an Alicorn queen, and she decided that she wanted to take the magic for herself. The princess took that magic away from her, imbued it in the crystals, sent everyone away, and then cast this magical bubble around Equestria so that the Alicorn Queen lost her magic, number 1, so left her in a weakened state, and she couldn't find Equestria again because it was invisible to her. And I'm like, that's very interesting.
It is. It's actually really cool, too, because it's not what you typically expect from these sorts of moments in shows, like especially kids shows, where it's like, okay, we're going to have the lore building moment where we have, a story that's told in this sort of, sort of deliberately alternate animation style that, like looks like you're reading out of a storybook. And then you have this really cool moment where it's like, wait, that's not the story I heard. And then same thing, same storybook moment, but it's conflicting. And now you're like, wait, now I legitimately don't know who to believe. Because the funny thing is, the character who maybe has the most credence to their story is actually Opaline, because Alicorns are long-lived, so she probably did live through these things, or maybe if she didn't, she would have had a better memory for these things, but also she's clearly evil. So on one hand, you have Sunny's story, which is less reliable, it's folklore, it gets passed down through generations, things can get twisted. But on the other hand, you have Opaline's story, which has more of a right to be accurate, but is also being told by someone who clearly has an ulterior motive. So you're really left with 2 stories that are like both equally unreliable, and you're just like, man, I have no idea, because they're so different from each other. It's really hard to average what the actual truth would be, and it's honestly really, really cool.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think what I like most about this is not the story itself, but the fact that, number one, we're bringing lore back, which is great. But number two, it's coming from two unreliable narrators.
Yes.
So,
yes,
with that being the case, it really makes you wonder what lore is true, what lore is being made up, and also what is the actual lore in between all of that. And I think that's a really fun mystery so far.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. This is kind of what I was saying at the beginning of the episode, the beginning of the review, that this was the first episode that really made me actually interested in watching more. And it's because of this, not just the fact that we're getting more lore, but we're getting, like you said, these two conflicting stories from two unreliable narrators, and it just leaves you, frankly, with more questions than it does answers, which is great. You know, it makes you want to watch more.
And then Zip is just like, where did you learn all that stuff? And Misty's just like, well, I kind of made some of it up. It's just kind of...
Yeah, it tries to save face a little bit.
Then Izzy is just like...
Each story was great, especially that Alicorn Queen part, Misty. So creative, so epic. Got any more?
Whoa, hold on a second. That's a little bit too close. So now that we are done with what most people want to see, and yes, I will be making a separate video of just that little chunk, because I know people are going to want to listen to that.
Oh, yeah.
We continue on to Misty running away because she is so overwhelmed with everything that's going on. All the accusatory questioning that Zip's been giving is just too much. She runs outside, and I like that Zip says that she's sorry, that, you know, she's just trying to get to the truth. But I'm like, again, Zip, if you had just taken the time to get to know her before trying to accuse, you would have had a lot easier time with trying to find out the truth.
And admittedly, that story conflicting so hard with Sunny's, especially if Sunny's story is like a relatively well-known one, is the moment I think where Zip is the most justified in being suspicious.
For sure.
But it still is just, with the moments that we saw before, it's just too much. It's, if it had been just that moment where like we'd had her maybe kind of being a little bit suspicious, but kind of brushing it off as, oh, Misty's just awkward. And then same thing like with the elevator, like, oh, that is kind of suspicious, but like, okay, whatever. The reason she gave was legitimate. But then this moment is one where those things were weird. And now that you're saying this, now I'm kind of starting to see those other things as legitimately being weird. I'm going to throw out these accusations. That would have been a much more justifiable storyline. It would have made Zip more likable, and it would have been more believable.
But, sure.
You know, we got what we got.
But I do have to say, I find it really interesting with what Izzy says here.
You want to know the truth, Zip? My first real sleepover in Maritime Bay has been a complete and total jinx-a-thon. That means failure.
While that line at the end is funny, it also really kind of punches you in the gut, because you know that right now the big thing is Izzy really is homesick. And the fact that she was trying to do something to make herself feel better, but Zip had to come in and start ruining it for her, is really a gut punch.
You know, it absolutely is a gut punch. This is where we've this is continuing kind of what, you know, I was mentioning at the beginning, that we see foreshadowed, and this is when we kind of see the some of the payoff for it is that Izzy is legitimately homesick, and this is another one of my favorite another reason this is one of my favorite episodes, aside from the jokes, the interaction between Misty and Izzy, is that we're getting character progression on Izzy that is not just her being a jokester, but having real feelings, dealing with those things, which is kind of nice to see as well. This sort of representation of, you know, people in real life who can be jokesters or be charismatic and seem like they've got everything together, but on the inside it's like, no, we're all dealing with things. Even Izzy, you know, the character who is the most happy-go-lucky, jokey, is still dealing with homesickness. And I think it's a nice thing to see represented on screen, because it makes the characters feel more real, and it's a nice thing to see in an educational kids show that gets across the message that even people who seem like they have it together and are jokey and all that are always going to be dealing with their own things, even if they don't show it. And so it's just you know, again, good job, writers. This was a great moment, and yeah, it is a gut punch for everything you just said.
And I also have to say, you know, they did touch it at one point in the Tell Your Tale series at the first couple episodes, where it's like, I remember my send off, because it's the episode where Pip and Zip are being sent off, going to Maritime Bay, and you have Izzy with that one little throwaway line of, I remember my send off, and it's her just standing there all alone in Bridalwood. That kind of hit me when I initially saw that, and then when I see it here and that she's homesick, I'm like, wow, this girl has some real character depth, and I really am here for it.
No, absolutely. There is a surprising amount of depth to her character, and it's another reason why she's why she is my favorite of the main characters. One, because she's the most entertaining, and has potentially some of the most, as deep-seated as this show can go, deep-seated emotional issues that will hopefully get, you know, in episodes like this, addressed and resolved. You know, which again is just a great character in general.
It then goes into Misty trying to, you know, freaking out, having all this nervous laughter, and the fact that she's just spouting all this exposition very loudly. I was like, girl, you need to calm it down. You're gonna get caught, like seriously. But then afterwards, when Izzy talks about being homesick, she starts listing off some of the things that was making her homesick and some of the things she missed from Bridalwood. And among those things, and it's interesting because we're kind of going back at this after seeing Winter Wish Day. There were two things here that actually referenced Winter Wish Day. So among what she misses about Bridalwood is that she's talking about Wishy Hoof and lighting the Glopaz stones on each day of the Wishy Hoof holidays, which those are two references to Winter Wish Day, which we get to see in that special, which I think is a great bit of continuity.
It's another one of those like surprising moments that this show has, for all its flaws, a lot more continuity than G4 did, and it's like honestly kind of surprising, but is one of the refreshing things to see that's different about G5 versus G4 is those moments of continuity where I'm like, oh wow, that's really cool that they reference even these things that are like smaller events. It just gives a continuity to the universe that is pretty satisfying.
Absolutely. And then as Izzy is continually, you know, talking about what she misses, Pip and Sunny had gone up to her room and started putting up all these little things that she had mentioned to bring a bit of Bridalwood to the Bright House. What I find interesting with this particular moment, and I know this has happened before, but one thing I have to mention is that there's a bit of a separation of the way the friendships are between G4 and G5. Because in G4, a lot of those episodes in the early seasons were very much about Twilight learning how to become friends, how to deal with some conflicts of friendship. Whereas here in G5, a lot of these characters are past that point.
Yes, agreed.
Because of that, because they are able to have this type of friendship and bond with each other, they're able to do these things for each other, such as Sunny and Pip going in and bringing that bit of Bridalwood over to Izzy in the Bright House, because you would not see that in an earlier season of G4, because they'd be still learning how to interact with each other, how to communicate, all that stuff. But here, because they have that solid foundation, they're able to do more stuff like this, and I really, really like it.
That's actually a really good point. It makes me think of a little bit, the comparison that you made, makes me think, I don't remember the episode title, but season 5, episode 3, where they are kind of trying to make Twilight's new castle, the Crystal Castle, feel more at home, feel like the old library. And they all kind of, conflict. They have their own ideas. They're just trying to put their own spin on it. And at the end, they kind of realize, well, this is not about us. This is about what Twilight would want. Right? That's like a big character building moment for those members of the main 6 versus, like you said, they're kind of already past that, and I think it's really cool. It's not necessarily that is me saying that G4 did that wrong, right? It's just a different way of telling those stories, but it's actually really cool because it does make this show stand out from G4, where we're not just recycling the same plot lines and the same character arcs. Because, you've got a main cast who, for the most part, kind of already understand what it means to be friends. And so it's in that way, it almost feels a little bit more mature, which is, I think, a little bit different from kind of how the rest of the show is. A lot of the show, I think, in this with G5 is a little bit more childlike than G4 was. But the way that it represents friendships, interestingly enough, is not, which is, to its credit, pretty cool. It's mature, and it is different than G4 in a way that I think makes it stand out. So, excellent point.
So Missy comes back. And I do have to say, I like that Izzy was just like, I did this all for you. We want you to feel welcome. We want you to enjoy the time with us. And I think that's a really wholesome moment.
It is.
And then they all start going to sleep. And then right here at the very end, I know I said for the last episode that it felt kind of weird that they were going to the Opaline stuff. And then there was yet another scene before the end of the episode. This, I feel like, has a better ending because it's literally where she opens up the window again, flips up the mirror, and says, Opaline, I'm in. I know where I need to go. Just give me some time. And then you hear Zip kind of perk her ear up and start to kind of wake up a little bit. It's like, what's going on here? And that's when it ends. And I'm like, ooh, this is getting juicy. I like it.
It is. It definitely, it's exactly like we were saying, that this is the moment that we wanted to see, where we end with a sort of a little bit of a cliffhanger, or rather like a, well, let's see what happens next moment. And honestly, that last scene is actually pretty intense, because we see this whole episode, and then in the most recent kind of scenes, Misty feel really welcomed in, and she, goes to talk to Opaline and is just expressing how happy she is that she feels accepted somewhere. And then Opaline is like, but you have to remember, the mission, more or less, right? And she's like, oh yeah, that actually the mission. And it's like, actually was like painful to watch this character who's finally getting some affection and feeling welcomed fall right back into that sort of trained deviousness, as it kind of like the camera just sort of like zooms out as they're continuing to have this sort of like, plotting discussion. And it's like actually a really like dark moment in the show, like from a character, from an emotional standpoint. It is surprisingly dark, not in a way that I think is like too tonally dark for the show, but it was again a moment where I was like, damn, that really made me feel something.
Yes.
And I'm happy that the show is making me, as much as it sucks that it's making me feel bad for a character, the fact that it has made me care enough about this character that I felt legitimately bad and a little bit uncomfortable at the end of it, and that we're leaving off with the plot. As painful as it is a great way to end the episode, because it really makes you be like, oh, crap.
And I really find it interesting because you were saying that, she's finally feeling this affection, she's finally feeling some love, but she has to go back into that other mindset. Yeah. And I feel like that's because she feels like she is subservient to Opaline.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really hope, we haven't gotten anything like this yet, but I really hope that we're going to get an episode where everything comes to a head. The new five find out what's going on, find out she was an undercover agent for Opaline, and that at the start, they're not going to want to trust her. They're going to be like, how could you do this? But at the same time, it would give Misty an opportunity to say, I thought that this was the only way I was going to get my cutie mark. I thought that this was the only way that I was going to be able to be something. But as I've spent more and more time with you guys, I'm finding out that is not the case, and that I want to leave. And I hope that there's something along the lines of that happening, because if it does, it's going to be magnifique.
Absolutely. It's definitely got the setup for a really excellent moment. Kind of, in line with sort of the payoff that we have with Zuko in Avatar The Last Airbender. Spoilers if you haven't seen Avatar. It's been out for several years. You probably should have seen it by now. If you haven't, go watch it.
It's really good.
Yeah, but it's a setup for that kind of moment, right? This character who has their heart in the right place, like clearly from the beginning, clearly has been, kind of gaslit by a parent figure, and then has this great moment of being able to defy that person, realize I don't have to be living my life that way, and then gets accepted by their new friends.
Yes.
It definitely seems like what they're starting to set up, and of course, this being a kid show where everything has to have a happy ending, I'm sure that is what some form of that is eventually what we're going to get, and I look forward to the day that happens.
For sure. So that was the traditional unicorn sleepover. And to be completely honest with you, I love Portrait of a Princess. That was my other episode that I really, really liked. But this episode is just so damn good. It is so good. Now, as terms of rating this, I'm going to go with a 9.5. Because the only thing that's keeping it from a 10 was if Zip's character was just a little bit better. If it was just less of that very accusatory tone, this would have been a 10. But because of that little issue, it still bothers me enough. So 9.5 from me.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. For me, it's a 9 out of 10. For basically the exact same reasons that you said. There's a lot to like about this episode. There's it accomplishes everything it wants to set out to do. It got me to be genuinely entertained in the show. There's laughs. The plot moves at a really good pace. The exposition of the stories is really, really cool. And then, that kind of whole storytelling moment, like we said, kind of gets flipped on its head in this really cool way, leaves you with more questions than answers. The characterization of everyone is good, except for Zip, right? That's the one thing. And it's one of those things where, you can have moments in shows where characters act in a way that is maybe not immediately likable. That's not like every character has to be likable, but this did feel like a moment where Zip is, even as a detective, jumping to conclusions and accusations really, really fast in a way that doesn't feel believable. If it had been believable, sure, but this just feels unnecessary, and like they could have reached the plot conclusion while not having to sacrifice Zip's character in the process, right? We could have had these more restrained reactions that then maybe eventually come to a head with her being like, wait, no, the things you have been doing are kind of weird. That might have even been a better way of telling the plot. So yeah, same as you. That's my one issue with it, especially because, again, in my opinion, from a writing standpoint, it was avoidable. But yeah, other than that, like, seriously, no complaints. The characterization was excellent. The handling of the plot was excellent, and where it leaves us is excellent. So yeah, same 9 out of 10. Like, aside from that one small thing, honestly, no complaints. It's really excellent episode, and I hope that we get more like this, because if this is the direction that the show is going, then I think we're going to have a good show.
I really hope so, too. Now, for the next couple episodes, this is going to be a little bit interesting. So we're still going to have Jensen on, but we're also going to be having John Lusk and one of his friends on for the next couple episodes. We're all just going to have one big old discussion for the final 2 episodes of this season. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you guys stick around for it. And until then, that's it from me, John.
And that's it from me, Jensen, a.k.a. Status.
And we will talk to you guys later. Peace out, Dragon.